Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Oh Shoot. I am joined by a guest today. I have Daniel Macadangdang on the podcast. And I've been following Daniel for a while on socials, and he's a really talented photographer. So I'm really excited for you guys to just hear his wisdom, hear his experiences, and all that. So, Daniel, why don't you say hi to everyone and just tell them who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks again, Cassidy, for having me here. This is such a pleasure. I'm Daniel Macadangdang. I'm a concert photographer and content creator based out of Seattle, Washington.
Awesome. Cool. We love Seattle. My husband has family there, so we visit like twice a year, something like that. But I love the area. Did you grow up there?
Yes, born and raised out of Seattle. So a lot has changed over the years, but I definitely don't see myself living anywhere else but here.
Awesome. That's great. I love that you're right where you're supposed to be. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't you tell me a little bit of your photography story? Kind of walk me through like your origin story of how you got started shooting. What did that whole process look like for you?
Yeah, I think, short story long, right after I graduated business school, I started working at a marketing agency. And one of the first accounts that I ever had was this travel company out of Iceland. And so they come over to the US in major hubs and just kind of educate people on like the culture of Iceland. So they brought chefs to build all these different dishes. They also brought over mixologists to create these cocktails, but they also brought Icelandic artists. And so at a very popular venue in Seattle, they brought a metal band, and I'm not that into metal, but I thought it was a really great opportunity. And I was just right in front of the band with a 35 millimeter, my Sony A73. And it was just the most thrilling experience ever. And I just remember like being so close to the artist and taking my first few concert photos. And I think ever since then, I've just been so hooked on that feeling, and it's just been an evolving passion. So that's
Yeah.
where it kind of all started. And, later down the years, I started getting more work through publications and artists directly. And I think after that, my big first artist was actually Red Hot Chili Peppers. So it's been,
Awesome.
yeah, it's been great.
Very cool. So, were you always into photography then? Was it just kind of a hobby leading up to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, just always wanting a camera, and I kind of saved up a bunch of my money in high school to actually get my first camera. But I've always been interested in photography. I started out doing like landscape and outdoor photography, but then I just started seeing all these people do incredible stuff at concerts, and I kind of just had that opportunity and thought I'd give it a shot.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And you are full time in your business, correct?
Yes. Well, I kind of juggle three different jobs right now. So it's the concert photography. I work as a content producer for this agency here in Seattle. And then I'm also a creative director for an agency doing a lot of photography work in Seattle. So doing a bunch of stuff for different businesses and just social media strategy and content development. So keeping myself
Okay.
busy with photography for sure.
Yeah. Which of those three do you find is like, would you call any of those like your main job?
Um, I kind of juggle everything evenly. I feel like I don't sleep. this It's definitely this growing passion of just trying to stay creative through everything, and just trying to stay busy and getting better and better every day.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you went to business school and you like worked in marketing agencies and stuff. Do you like, I guess, kind of walk me through like, was that impactful on your current situation? Like you being a photographer, like how did that impact it?
Yeah, I've always been kind of a creative at heart, and I think that's what kind of led me to study marketing. So I do think some of what I learned in school has helped me kind of be this brand on Instagram and official social channels. But um, I also do feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect from everything I learned to everything I'm doing right now. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Would you recommend like schooling like that for someone that wants to become a photographer?
That's a good question, because I think 90% of the people that I know that are successful photographers or just photographers in general definitely didn't go to school for photography or anything creative or business school at all. I often think it's like a very, very different field that they studied, but creatively, photography was their outlet,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I personally have like a degree in digital marketing. I literally sometimes forget what my degree is in digital marketing. And surprisingly, I have found it to be helpful. But I think the difference between like going to school for photography versus business, I think having the business knowledge is what like a lot of people don't naturally have the inclination for. So I think it was good for me to go for that because I think the art is something that is just like instilled in you, but I think the business is something that you can learn.
Yeah, I love the way you put it there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned that you shoot on a Sony. What's your gear lineup? What do you shoot on? Give us the
Yeah,
details.
I grew up as a Canon fanboy. I am still a Canon fanboy. But when the A73 came out, there was such a big promotional push on that body with all these creators on Instagram, you including as well. So I kind of jumped from Canon to get my first mirrorless with Sony, but eventually went back to Canon 1 year after using it. But the
Really?
A73 is like the perfect intro full frame hybrid camera. I have like nothing but good things to say about it.
Yeah. So what do you shoot on now?
Yeah, I shoot with a Canon R5 and a Canon R6 Mark II.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Have you found, I'm not super familiar with like the Canon R cameras and stuff, but I
Mhm.
have heard that like a lot of people have questions about the differences between the two. Have you found there to be quite a big difference between the R5 and the R6?
There are a few different things that are different when it comes to like AI focusing and speeds and megapixels for sure. But I think both of them, for anybody in any kind of a photography capacity, like those are definitely really great cameras to use for anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it's like any camera will do, to be honest. We're just like fighting over little specs at this point with,
Exactly. And I think it's also like more about the experience you have like holding that camera and making it feel comfortable and like the experience you get using it, right? More than, what the specs are. Because I feel like you can find the a similar or identical camera across any kind of different brand, but it's just about the experience, right? It's kind of like picking Nike for your shoes or an Adidas, so.
right. It is about the feeling. I have noticed that some cameras, I like the way that they feel in my hands better. That's why I like Sony the best because it just feels the best in my hands. But yeah, I like the way you put that because it's like you just have to go with what sticks with you because at the end of the day, we're all kind of taking great photos. We've got great specs. Unless you're like, I don't know, shooting birds or something, or or sports that have to have like crazy, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's easier to just like blame the specs or whatever, but it's like I think it just matters the feeling in your hand, truly.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the reasons why I left Sony to go to Canon. The Sony, I absolutely love the camera, but it was just a little too small for my hands. I don't think I
Right.
have like the biggest hands in the world, but when I picked up the R5, it was just kind of like a perfect fit, right? Like a
Yeah.
perfect glove. And I just loved the textures of it, the sounds of all the dials and the shutter. It was just kind of my Goldilocks zone kind of camera.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that is so interesting to think about. I honestly have never really thought about like the textures of a camera, like the sound of a shutter or like the feeling of the button. It's so interesting to think about. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people kind of appreciate Fujifilm cameras, right? Because it's
mm,
kind of like this analog soul in a digital body, and you can still feel like what it felt like shooting with film cameras, right? So you still get that experience while carrying out that digital effort.
that's so true. I think now I'm starting to understand, like you said, Fujifilm people better, all of the things. Even like I've heard like very like Nikon only people love Nikon because of like the colors at the end. Like there's just so many things that can make you choose one specific camera. It's like once you have your reason, stick to your reason.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So let's get into, well, okay. Did we even talk about the fact that you shoot concerts? Have we talked about
I
that
don't
yet?
think so. I think we went on this tangent of
We did.
other.
Okay. So Daniel is a concert photographer, which is how I found you, mainly because your work is just like amazing concerts and events and all stuff like that. So I have concert questions to ask you, but first I wanted to ask you, what is the biggest lesson that you learned when you were first starting photography? So before we get into where you are now, a lesson that you learned when you first started.
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson I learned is, to kind of quote Taylor Swift, if you fail to plan, you definitely plan to fail, right? So I think like a lot of the shows when I first started, like I didn't understand the etiquette. I didn't understand like where I needed to be. I felt super lost, which is why, I put a lot of effort into social media and trying to educate people on things that I wish I knew far earlier. Um, but I learned that if you don't prepare, you're definitely not going to get the shots that you want. And one of the ways that I do prepare for a lot of shows is to kind of do a lot of research of how the show was performed at a previous date. So there's
Okay.
actually a lot of people on like YouTube that will record the entire performance of an artist. And so often concert photographers are only allowed to shoot like the first 3 songs, or sometimes the first 2 songs, or the first 10 minutes. But if you watch those videos, you can kind of identify things like which side of the stage does the artist come from? Are there fireworks, pyro, CO2 cannons going off, or is there dramatic lighting, or how many catwalks are there? There's like all these different pieces of information that you can put together so that you can like better position yourself. And so after I started doing a lot of that work up front, I've just felt incredibly more confident when I'm shooting concerts. And so that's something I wish I did far, far earlier. And I try to tell as many people as I can to do that as well.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. I think that can be applied to a lot of other niches as well. And it even just gets me thinking, I used to shoot not concerts like you shoot, but like literally like these small little like college concerts. And it would be the same performance every week. And so by the end, I think it was like 8 weeks later, I knew exactly when the lights would go and what would be a good shot and what angle I would want. And now that I'm thinking of it, if you could get that, 8 weeks in advance and you actually did your research, that would 100% put you in a position to be getting the best photos absolutely possible. And I'm a preparer as well. So that is a really, really great tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. That actually got me thinking of a very random question. Do you ever have, because I mean, it sounds like a lot like, oh, like the performer comes in on this side of the stage, but then there's fireworks over here. Like, do you ever shoot with multiple people on your team, or is it just you?
It's typically just me, but I do share like the barricade pit with other, publication photographers and outside photographers with like media outlets. So the space is definitely shared. But I do find that there are many opportunities where I'll be on one side of the stage just ready because I know the artist is coming out of the side, and everyone else is kind of on the other side, and then they rush over to where I am as well. So it's just kind of interesting in that aspect too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get into concerts. Let's just really dive deep here. Kind of walk me through how you got started in concerts. I know you mentioned like that heavy metal band, but like kind of walk me through I don't even know what it would be called, like your first couple of gigs and how it got started and all of that.
Yeah, I kind of started. There was like free concerts in Seattle, and I would just go and kind of just practice and just to make sure that this is something that I do like doing and it feels good to do. And what is the editing process like? And so I was already working for a publication, doing just a bunch of like coverage in Seattle, doing like food critic work as well. And they cover concerts too, and I kind of just threw my hat in the ring and said, "Hey, I'd love to shoot this concert." And I think the first one was Alan Stone over in Seattle, and then the next one was Red Hot Chili Peppers, and that was like my biggest arena first show. And so, yeah, it was really thrilling. It was such an experience, and yeah, I hope everyone can kind of partner with a publication as well.
Yeah. Is that how you mainly get gigs now, or is it mainly through social media?
In my first year of publications, or my first year of work, it was mainly through publications, just because a lot of big artists like Carrie Underwood or Post Malone, they already have a photographer resourced for that entire run. So there is no kind of need for direct support. So publications is like the way to go to be able to photograph that artist at their show. So the first year was just really me building my portfolio, and publications were just a catalyst in that.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. So, why don't you just kind of walk me through what the workflow of a concert or an event looks like for you? Like, I know you mentioned you do a little bit of prep, but walk me through your entire workflow. I always find it so interesting because this isn't anything I do, so I have no idea what your process would look like.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I do all the research. I typically like to park at the stadium or wherever the event is about an hour and a half before doors open, just because parking is crazy when everyone is trying to come into the city and see the artist. And in that entire time, I either find, a coffee shop or sit in my car and do that research over and over again and kind of formulate a game plan of like what I'm going to do. So I'll bring everything in my gear in, I'll shoot the show, come back, instantly import everything, double back it up, get into Lightroom and start editing. But throughout that process too, I'll also document like the absolute photos I want to use, just the file names, just to expedite the process a little bit and get those imported first before anything else.
Okay.
That way I can just get it out to the publication, because they do want to post, be the first people to post, to get that attention online too. So
So
that's majority of.
how quickly are you like delivering, let's say, just like those must-have photos?
Yeah, by next morning or ASAP. So I typically Seattle shows will end anywhere around like 10, 11 p.m. But I'll be up editing until 3 a.m. if I definitely need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what lenses do you find yourself using at a show? What do you have, like extra accessories that you bring along? Kind of just like open up your bag and explain it to me.
Yeah, I think the newest thing in my bag is the Ray-Ban Metas, because I brought that
Oh,
over to a music festival that I was shooting down in California, and it was just the easiest way to kind of get like live action shots of me like being 4 feet away from the artist, and they're like bending down and I'm taking pictures of them, and it's just that has been like I'm bringing that to every show I'm ever doing in the future. But in terms of lenses, I use the 100 to 300 millimeter f2.8, which is this huge chunky lens, but it's definitely been helpful when, if the artist has a lot of mobility and they're running all over the place, I can definitely reach them no matter where they're at. And
mm-hmm.
then I also use the 28 to 70 millimeter f2, which kind of acts like three primes in a zoom because of the f2, and it's a noticeable jump from f2.8 as well. So those two lenses I use um, about 90% of the time. But
Okay.
sometimes I'll definitely switch on like an 85 1.2 as well.
Okay. And are you like double harnessing at that point and you've got, so you're ready to go with either one because you never know when you're going to need a wide or a long.
Exactly. Yep. Double harnessed, double camera bodies, and then a sling bag as well, just to switch out lenses when I need to.
Awesome. That's something that I feel like I would really struggle with is the double, because I only just like hold one camera with me. And if I need like something different, I'll literally just like switch my lens because like, I don't know. I just like, I feel like that'd be so heavy and it'd be swinging around. Do you have any issues with like that feeling, or you're just used to it at this point?
I think I'm used to it. I think my shoulders and my back definitely hate me for it, but
Right.
there's really no good time to switch lenses, because you might just miss a really, really big opportunity in front of you. Like the only time I could think that if you're going in with a single camera body and you're switching it would be between songs, but sometimes you don't know if that next song is gonna start off with a huge jump in Fyro starting. And yeah, I'm a huge advocate for people to use two bodies, but I know that definitely comes at a cost too. financially.
Yes.
The only thing worse than taking too many photos while you're shooting is getting home and then having to edit all of them. Here's some ways to speed up your editing workflow without losing any quality in your work. Today, I want to introduce Aftershoot Edits 2.0. You can experience the most consistent edits straight out of Aftershoot. One of my favorite things about Aftershoot is their upgraded white balance and exposure AI models. Even if your lighting varies during your session and you have a lot of drastic changes, Aftershoot's able to instantly fix any blown out highlights, murky shadows, and overall, this feature allows you to have balanced photos no matter what your lighting conditions were. Another way to speed up your editing workflow is by using AI masking in Aftershoot Edits 2.0. This feature allows you to selectively edit your images through masking. With AI masking, Aftershoot can automatically select your subjects and adjust them to really make them pop in your image. Another great way to save time while you're editing is to use Aftershoot's advanced cropping and straightening. This tool allows you to customize and select any aspect ratio, and it even automatically crops in your photos so that the focus is more on your subject. It also can automatically straighten your photo, which is going to save you so much time in the long run. Say goodbye to spending way too much time editing your photos and use Aftershoot Edits 2.0. Aftershoot has an exclusive offer for all Shoot listeners, so go to the link in the description of this episode to find out more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and now back to the show.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I would think it would be wise to have two bodies. If I were a concert photographer, I probably would just be like, whatever. It'll hurt my shoulders, but I'm going to do it, whatever.
Yeah. And, it's only for like the first 3 songs, which is often like 10 to 15 minutes. So it doesn't seem that long. You can definitely exit the pit and put your gear down and kind of reevaluate things. But it's not terribly long unless you are, shooting directly for the festival or the artist. Then you're actually photographing the entire set, which is super taxing. Because at my last festival, I was shooting from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. and then editing from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. So it was definitely a lot of work for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. Yeah, you definitely don't sleep. That is for sure. To me, this is sounding very like stressful, almost just anxiety inducing. I think because it's like the 3 songs, like it's like you only get like 15 minutes and that's it. How do you handle that pressure?
Yeah, I think the pressure is definitely still there, but it's kind of the good pressure, right? Pressure makes diamonds. And I think after 15 minutes or first 3 songs, it actually becomes creatively redundant unless you know that there are specific things happening in the set, like a wardrobe change, for example. But yeah, you can definitely only get so many photos of an artist in such a small amount of time. So
Yeah, for sure. So with these concerts, are you getting paid? I'm assuming you are. But
yes.
and how does that, what does that look like? Like, are you comfortable sharing like general ranges? Because I think a lot of people want to get into something like this, but are afraid that it doesn't actually like pay.
Yes, absolutely. That is a super good question because a lot of people will talk about, is it a broke business? Can you live off concert photography? And I'd say like yes and no. I was fortunate enough to find a publication. Well, they run as like a publication and a media outlet, but I was fortunate to find them and they were willing to pay. But a lot of publications out there don't have the budget to pay as well. So in that sense, it is kind of difficult to make a living off concert photography if you are only working through publications. But a lot of the work or a lot of the money actually comes from touring, festivals, or being directly hired by talent that comes in.
Okay. So you'd kind of want to start maybe in publications to get your foot in the door and whatever. And then if you are able to be like hired directly, that's where you might see a little bit more of the money come in.
Exactly. And like, I don't think I'd be where I am now if I didn't do any of that publication work. That's just like, that's my whole entire kind of portfolio. And that has led me to so many different gigs and going on tour as well. So it is kind of a double-edged sword because there's a lot of people who will do things for free and there's a lot of people who don't want to do things for free anymore. Yeah. So it is definitely a challenging business to be in.
Yeah, I'm sure. It sounds like it. So I saw that you were the tour photographer for Dylan Matthew, correct?
That's right.
So how did you get that job? Kind of walk me through like what that looked like.
Yeah, it was really random. There was nothing that I did in particular. I wish I had a crazier story to be like, hey, this is what I did and these are the obstacles I went through. But I was actually having this day of like self-doubt and
Oh,
imposter syndrome.
yeah.
And I just get this message on Instagram, and it was in my hidden folder. And I need to do a better job at checking that. But the day that I did, I get a message from Dylan, and he messages me saying like, "Hey, I'm obsessed with your photos." And so I've listened to so many of his songs. I'm a big EDM music lover, and he's featured on so many artists' songs that I follow, and I know his songs by heart too. And so I was just skimming his page, and I saw he just announced a tour, and one of the stops was over in Seattle, and I just kind of shot my shot and was like, "Hey, like I see you're coming to Seattle. I'd love to support you." And he says, "What if you just did my entire tour for me?" And it was just kind of like a whoa moment. I was screaming in my car. Thankfully, I was alone. I was on the way home too. But I was just so, it felt so validating too, which is such a hard thing. Being a photographer is a very vulnerable thing, just putting our art out there. So yeah, he hit me up through there and he connected me with his team. And then a few weeks later, he flew me out to New York and we just got started for the next 2 weeks from there.
That is an awesome story. Like, I know you're like, oh, it's not like this crazy story, but it really is. Like, that's really, really cool. And that's really encouraging to hear. Like, number one, I know it's not great that you experience imposter syndrome, but someone as talented as you still experiences that feeling. You know what I mean? Like, it's always good to hear that even like someone that you might think, oh, I can't believe they would never, ever feel like this, like you still do. And then also you had something amazing happen on that same day, which is just like, it's just funny how
Yeah.
like, it's just what you needed and it happened.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think like I'm realizing that imposter syndrome is just this human feeling and it's just inevitable. It's a tape that will play in our heads. And sometimes we find ways to kind of tune it out. I think one of the ways that do help me is like finding a community and chatting with other people who have the same issues or helping others get through things and educating others. But that message from out of the blue was definitely a healing moment for me for sure.
Yeah, cool. And it's cool that he saw your work on Instagram. So
Yeah, I think he said it was just through Reels, which is like
oh,
I was just pushing a bunch of Reels about like the artists I've shot through publications, and so that's exactly why I'm a huge advocate for people to find a publication to partner with early on because it's really going to help your career and your portfolio and what you
yeah.
can showcase as your talent.
Yes, that's great advice. Speaking of advice, I would love for you to give a little advice for someone that wants to get into concert photography. If you have any specific pieces of advice that you haven't already shared that you think would be helpful for someone to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think above all else, I think supporting your local artists as well. There's a lot of people that are not so easy on asking for photography support because they think they'll always have to pay for that. But there's a lot of artists that are willing to build with you while they're also building their brand as well. So there's a really good partnership there. I know a lot of people who have went that route and the artists grew into this big deal and they've become their tour photographer and just based on the loyalty they've had there. So I think if you're trying to get started, support your locals first. The other thing is, what I've mentioned several times in this chat is finding a publication, just because that's like you leverage the credibility of that media outlet to get into really, really big shows. Because like in my first 6 months of working with a publication, I photographed Post Malone, and I never thought that would ever be on my bingo card ever. So
Yeah.
those two, and then yeah, just be results oriented and obsess over the results that you want. If you're editing in Lightroom, it doesn't match the vision that you have in your head, like burn the midnight oil, watch the YouTube tutorials, reach out to me. Like do whatever it takes to get as far as you can with editing. So those are my top three I would give for anyone wanting to get started.
Yeah. I like that last point of just making sure you really love your results. Because I think if you're in a business like concert photography, it's so physically draining, emotionally draining. Like you have to really love what you're putting out there. Otherwise, you're going to hit this moment of like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't like what I'm putting out. You know, I don't know. Do you have a few editing? This is just random, but like editing tips or little things that you personally have found to be really revolutionary for you?
I think first of all is there's a dropper tool in Lightroom to correct your white balance tool.
Yes.
And there's a lot of like too much blue light or too much red light or magenta light in concerts. And if you just learn how to properly white balance, you will save like so much skin tone colors, and it'll dramatically change your photos. So that's something I encourage everyone to learn first on.
Mm-hmm. If a photo is taken and let's say like there's blue light on your subject, like their whole skin is like blue, are you gonna correct it to where like it's obviously that blue was intentional? Are you correcting it so that their skin then turns normal skin color and then all of the colors are messed up, or how do you just leave it blue?
I typically correct it. There are opportunities where you can't recover it at all. But I typically like to correct it so it looks more human and natural.
Yeah.
I know that sounds kind of ironic to say natural, but yeah.
Okay. I've always wondered that. So I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about social media, because not only are you great at shooting, you're also great at socials, which now that I'm talking to you, like this is all kind of lining up with like your background. It's all like coming together why you're like so good at what you do. So can you, I guess like, do you think that your growth has wait, what even is my question? I'm so sorry. I'm like looking at my notes and I'm like, I did not word that correctly.
You're all good. No, take your time.
Oh, no. I have. Okay. I'm locked in. Has your social media growth impacted your bookings at all? It sounds like it has.
Yes, it definitely has. This year so far, I think 90% of the jobs have come from artists and management reaching out on social media, which is like, it's interesting because I don't think like a follower count should be a reflection on how good of a photographer you are or the quality of your work.
Yeah.
But there is, to an extent, like it does show some kind of credibility, or, brands and businesses want to kind of see that. So I think the follower count definitely has helped me get a lot of gigs, and it's exactly why I advocate for other people to grow their social and grow their brand, right?
Yeah. I agree. I feel like followers does not always equal like the best quality of work, but I do think if you have a platform, it does open you up to more opportunities naturally.
Absolutely.
Your content being put in front of the right people, for sure. What do you think has contributed most to your large growth? Like, is there a specific strategy or something specific you're doing that has caused you to grow so much?
I think it's the just educating on everything that I know through Reels. I've tried to just give everything that I've learned, share the mistakes that I've made over the years to everyone, and I think that's just been a really easy way for me to kind of build this community and connect with people, which eventually led to me like starting this Discord server, and we're about 8,000 people in. And
awesome.
It's just a really, really easy way for me to kind of orchestrate different conversations and discussions on topics, and just to directly help people learn things. And I think, everybody wants to get better, and everyone wants to learn and be part of this community, like a movement. And I think, just educative content is the kind of the connection there.
Yeah. Just providing value to your audience, and just
yes, absolutely.
You're basically connecting the dot between, hey, I take photos of cool people, but here's how I got there. Here's
Exactly.
my settings, or here's how I edited this, or here's how I literally got the job. Here's the lens I used. Yeah. I think that's like a really big disconnect that a lot of photographers have, is the value side of it. It's like, we can show our work all we want, but like, are you actually providing something that's valuable to your viewer?
Yeah. And I mean, social media is a whole job in itself
Oh, for
too,
sure.
right? And not everyone wants to talk to the camera or, wants to make cringy videos, but I mean, post those cringy videos. It's all about just putting yourself out there. And yeah, it does take a lot of effort, but I think you start to learn more about yourself, of who you are as a creative, once you start kind of building your brand around the talent that you have.
Absolutely. When it comes to social media, do you have any tips, maybe specific strategies or things for someone that wants to grow? Like, if you had to just like throw out a couple tips for growth, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a super interesting question, because I think during the time that I was able to just grow my account from like 5,000 to 100K, it's like about 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the time of the algorithm where it was just pushing all the reels that are like 6 to 7 seconds long. So I think it's about just really like hooking people on the things that they want to know, and then just giving as much value through the caption, or in the comment section as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like when it comes to content like that, like 6 to 7 seconds, it's almost hard to provide value. Like, what are you putting like your value in the caption, would you say? Or is it just like a quick little tip that's like 7 seconds long on the screen?
Yeah, I mean, I think during that time, like I wanted to make a little bit longer form content, which I started eventually doing, but using like the 6 to 7 seconds, and I hate that, like, I'm kind of conforming to do this just to get pushed through the algorithm, but it's kind of the game that we play. But I would definitely put a lot of the value on screen, and let it like endlessly loop, or in
Mm-hmm.
captions as well. But since then, I've definitely kind of changed my strategy a little bit more, and trying to show my face more to this brand, because I think that's something I'm definitely lacking in doing, and I'm not always the easiest person to talk to the camera. So this is something I'm definitely working to improve upon. So
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because like you mentioned, playing into the algorithm, like we have to do it. But at the same time, like we have to play into the algorithm, but sometimes when you play into the algorithm, you're still not making the connection between audience and creator. Like you could have like a looping video and like, yeah, it's going to get a million views, but like, do people actually know who you are? Do they actually like, connect it to your brand and everything? So I think, it's good to create the content that is going to hit the masses, but at the same time, like you're saying, like also showing your face and doing stuff like that is really going to solidify your audience and
right.
keep them around.
Yeah. And I think I learned really, really late that, I was just seeing these numbers and seeing these results, and seeing, my follower count go up from these really short videos. But I learned so late that I should have been doing that, and making longer form content for the people to stay, right? I think
Yeah.
the short form is really good for reaching non-followers and getting their attention, but I wasn't making enough effort in retaining people, even though I feel very, fortunate enough for people to stick around. But I do need to do a better job of, making longer content to keep people around and not to alienate them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to social media, do you have any, I guess I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but like video templates, or like types of videos that you think do really well for photographers? I always get people that come to me and they're like, okay, I know I need to post videos, but like, what actually should I post? Like, do you have any ideas? We can just brainstorm some content ideas for people.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, because there's a lot of, I do encourage a lot of people to kind of hop on the trends when there are some, but I think a lot of the content that I made have just been me kind of speaking my mind, right? I'll often take like 80 photos that are all taking in a one moment and just turning into this GIF, and then put some kind of on-screen copy on there, like the 3 lenses I use for every concert opportunity, and then the caption, I'll just provide a lot of that value, or on the screen as well. But I wish I could say that there is like this template that I use, or this is how you can build a template, but a lot of it has just kind of been me kind of speaking my mind too. So
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
that's a great tip. Like you're basically just putting your work, adding value to it. Like I think a lot of people just think they need to show, even just show behind the scenes and show results. It's like, I feel like at this point, people need more than that. And, you know, if it's you talking, if it's, you know, a long caption, so you got the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. I also have them. I'm literally obsessed with them. And I think they're so good. I feel like it's a great way to just like get content. Like literally I would watch a 3-minute video of you shooting. Like you wouldn't even have to make any cuts. Like that's how interesting I think that point of view is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've been making with my recent reels. I'll just take, you know, B-roll footage of me wearing the glasses, shooting an artist on the stage, and I'll just put like, what unwritten rules do you follow as a concert photographer? And, you know, a bunch of people will chime in, and it's a great source of information for people who are trying to get into it as well. So that's like another, you know, example of how I kind of speak my mind and trying to get people to talk to each other as well. But ever since they've updated the glasses to 3 minutes, like that is a huge game changer.
Yes.
And you can go on IG Live with it too, which I did at my last festival too.
Oh, I did not know that. That's kind of a game changer. I do really like that. I feel like the only downside to the glasses, I don't know if you've run into this, is the battery dies relatively quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It definitely does. But I mean, it's great that the case is definitely a charger too.
That's true. I did have my glasses overheat. I was shooting outside for like maybe 30 minutes and it did overheat, and it told me I had to like put it back in the case and stuff. But besides that, yeah, they've been great. To circle back to this was what I was initially going to say. I like how you get people to comment on your stuff. Like, and I never even thought about it being a resource for people. I just always thought, oh, you get comments so that you get like interactions, and then your video gets pushed more. But I like the idea that the comments are also like literally like a thread, like a resource thread. Like, I think that's a really smart way. Even if you don't know the information, you know what I mean? Like someone else is going and commenting, and then this person is, and this person is. It's just a really good way to get everyone involved. I like it.
Yeah. And I get surprised sometimes because there's a lot of people who will comment on other people's, asking like, what's the why behind that? Like, why do we have to wear all black, or why is there only a 3-song limit? So it's just a really great way for people to kind of just learn from each other. Because I feel like sometimes on social media, it's just so hard to talk to each other. And I think if you want to be part of a community and you want to learn, you definitely have to converse.
Yeah. Love it. So I have 2 random questions for you.
Sure.
And then I'm going to ask you about a crazy photography story. So you can like prep your brain for that. But I always try to ask my guests, like, if they have a crazy something that has happened to them while they're shooting. So my first question for you, do you have any like books or podcasts or just content that you consume that you really enjoy that you would like to share with people? Like, I'm thinking kind of like what is the word? Like, not self-motivating, but you know, like those types of things, like good for the brain.
Good for the brain.
What is the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Educational?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess I don't.
You don't have time. You barely sleep.
I barely sleep. I don't even sleep. I'm Edward Cullen. No, I don't think I actually have books or podcasts or resources that I actually like look into to kind of help. I've just been kind of a lone wolf, if that's one way to kind of describe it.
Yeah.
But hopefully, you know, I think, you know, the goal with all this is to be that resource for other people too, you know.
Yes. I got you.
Leverage me as a resource to, you know, learn what you want to know.
Mm-hmm. I used to be kind of a big book person when it comes to like business books, but I'm not so much anymore. I think sometimes like I don't want to like relax and like still have my brain thinking about business. You know what I mean? Even like business podcasts, I don't always listen to because I'm just like, I want something fun and light, you know, I don't know. Maybe like if I'm working, I would, but yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of how I view it. I'm like, if I'm off the clock, I'm off the clock. Like, don't bother me.
Yeah.
Okay. So my second question for you, if you didn't shoot concerts, what would you shoot?
That's a really good question. I mean, in addition to concerts, you know, like me and my fiance, we do weddings and engagements and proposals and
Okay.
portraits and real estate together. We actually have a wedding this weekend. So I think my passions would definitely be there if I wasn't doing concerts, just because it's such. I mean, you already know you're a subject matter expert in this field too, but like, there's so much love in the air, so much really good energy, and you're kind of capturing this moment in time that's only going to happen once. And I think that means a lot behind the camera, other than, you know, the technical side of it. You know, there's so much meaning and purpose behind it. And so, you know, if concerts was definitely out of my life, I think it would definitely be focusing on, you know, portraits and weddings for sure.
Yeah. I had someone comment on my reel where I was like becoming a pickleball photographer or whatever. And the top comment, the top comment was like, I'm convinced that a wedding photographer can go and shoot like any event because a wedding is just like another version of an event. And I feel like for you, it would translate over really well into weddings, you know, because it's, you know, it's an event. It's just like boom, boom, boom. Things are happening. You don't have a chance to redo it. You can't have Post Malone lean over and like sing at you again. You know what I mean? You can't redo the first kiss. So I feel like you'd be good at that too.
Yeah, it's very journalistic, I would say, right? You have zero control over what happens. And I don't know. I find a lot of comfortability when it comes to journalistic approaches too.
Yeah, I personally love having things unfold in front of me and just kind of capturing it as it is, like not so much orchestrating. Okay, so do you have a crazy photography story, something crazy that's happened to you while you're shooting that you would like to share with the listeners?
Yes. Good question. I think it was my last festival over in California. It was the last day. It was the third day, and it was the headliner, and everybody came to the festival for this person. And 30 minutes before her set, and I was already on stage with like BB Rexa and Diplo, I get a message saying that um, there's caveats to shooting this headliner. And the first caveat is we only have 1 hour after she walks off the stage to import, edit, export, and drop it into Dropbox and deliver the photos. And we can't shoot in the barricade pit, which is just the area between like the stage and the very front row. And the only place we can shoot is from the front of house, which is also known as the soundboard, which is this 2-story building that's so far from the stage, and everyone's coming to this set because it's the only set that's happening. It's the headliner. And so I'm fighting through the crowds. I get at the top and I'm hearing all this news. And my first thought goes, okay, well, I don't have an iPad. I don't have a computer. I'll just do the Wi-Fi transfer from my RAWs to Lightroom Mobile. But I look at my phone and I only have 15%, and I left my portable charger charging in the trailer. So it was just kind of this panic moment. And, you know, the other person that was on the festival team with me, she brought her computer, and I had a 300 millimeter 2.8. So I was still able to reach the stage from super far back. I definitely had to crop in still. But it was kind of this I was formulating this game plan for my team and saying like, hey, I'll be up here, I'll take photos from here and use your computer. And there was just a bunch, it's a very limited space in that front of house too. I mean, there's people just working on the audios, all the cable management. And so I had several people just come up to me there who have no idea who I am and saying like, hi, you can't be up here. What's your name? Who are you working with? While the show is still going on. And I would kind of explain who I am and what I'm doing. And one of the artist's creative team people came up to me and saying like, "Hi, like who are you? You're not supposed to be shooting," and told me you can only shoot the first 3 songs and the second to last song. And so it was just this really hectic challenge. I actually kind of loved the high pressure environment that it put me in. But I was just shooting the first 3 songs, and then between that, I was editing on the computer and just on the floor right next to my camera setup. And yeah, I delivered right, I think, 30 minutes after the set was over.
Wow.
But that entire experience was like, that's the most expedited timeline I've ever had to work with. And I mean, I was using someone else's computer too. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have any of the, presets that I like to use, like my own presets, and kind of had to build everything from scratch and like wait for things to be imported. It was just this huge mess, but lots of learning lessons. And it was definitely like the craziest photography, I guess, experience I've ever had in my life. So,
Yeah, I'm kind of speechless because I'm thinking like you don't have much opportunity to go like left and right. You're basically just hoping that the artist comes close to you, or like, because everyone shooting in the soundboard is probably getting the same exact shot, right?
exactly. Yep. That's
Cool.
right.
Awesome. And do you know like why you couldn't go up to the barricade area? Like, was there a reason?
So, I mean, it's really up to the artist. I mean, some artists just prefer not to have photographers running around right underneath them. It's sometimes can be distracting. It could throw them off. It might be in the way of them connecting with fans. It's just kind of a preference for the artist. So, I mean, there's a lot of artists out there that don't prefer that. Like I shot a Carrie Underwood show, and she didn't allow barricade pit photographers, so we had to go to the front of the house. So it just really comes down to the preference of the artist and their team. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it was definitely tough because now you're limited to like creatively redundant photos that are just kind of taken in one spot. And I mean, I had a 300 millimeter, and that still wasn't enough to reach. So it was definitely a lot of work, it was a lot of effort, but we made the deadline, and the photos got approved for sure.
That's great. That's great. I'm so glad that you made it work. I feel like I like the lack of, like, you weren't able to prep. And it sounds like you're a prepper too. And that would really stress me out with like, I had this whole plan and then like, okay, I don't have a preferred lens. Like at that point, I'm trying to like rent something longer because it's like, I need to get even closer if I would have known, or like you would have brought your laptop. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's just crazy.
And that was like the last performance of the entire festival. And it was a 3-day festival, and I got by feeling super confident, super prepared. So that was just kind of like this throwing a wrench in it in the plans. But it was a really good test. There was a lot of adrenaline, which I definitely love. And would I do it again? I would definitely do it again. It was actually really fun.
It probably seemed, like if that were me, I would look back on that and be like, yo, that was crazy bad, but also like kind of crazy good. Like it just high stakes, high pressure, but you did it, and that's what's cool.
Yeah. I would 100% do it again. I mean, I wouldn't do it for like multiple artists back to back. I think that's too chaotic, but I think different challenges like that actually show like your true capabilities too. And I learned a lot from myself, and like how fast can I work and edit and get things out. So it was good. That was a really good opportunity for me.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing. You did not disappoint. So to wrap up here, I would love for you to tell everyone where they can find you, follow you. Do you have any exciting business things coming up? Just give us all the details.
Yes, absolutely. You can find me over on Instagram at Daniel Macadangdang, exactly how it sounds. I do have a workshop and course coming up, as well as a mentorship program, which I'm super, super excited to release. And I'm going to start building my YouTube as well to show a little bit more longer form content and to kind of build a bigger connection and more tutorials of how I do everything at concerts. So.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Daniel, thank you again for coming on the podcast today. It was great to chat with you, and I hope everyone listening has a great rest of their day.